Number 1. 18-year-old Safaa Boular. In April 2017, 18-year-old Safaa Boular, a British teenager from Vauxhall, London, was arrested for plotting a terror attack on UK soil. At the time of her arrest, she had become the youngest woman in the United Kingdom to be convicted of planning an Islamic State-inspired attack. Her interest in extremism began at the age of 15, while she was studying for her General Certificate of Secondary Education. She had been exposed to jihadist ideology online and through family influences. Her 44-year-old mother, Mina Dich, and her 22-year-old elder sister had both shown signs of radicalization. Safaa came into contact with Islamic State recruiter Naweed Hussein, a 30-year-old British fighter originally from Coventry, through social media. The two began an online relationship, exchanging messages and radical content. In August 2016, they held an unofficial online marriage ceremony. By then, she had already attracted the attention of the UK's security services. She had expressed a desire to travel to Syria to join Hussein and fight for Islamic states. Her desire to join him in Syria was obstructed when UK security services placed her under surveillance and prevented her travel. Her passport was confiscated due to earlier concerns about her intentions. Prevented from traveling abroad, she then turned her focus to conducting an attack in the UK, reportedly encouraged by Hussein himself. Hussein, who was under MI5 surveillance, revealed details of a planned grenade and firearm attack to undercover officers posing as fellow extremists. In mid-2017, Hussein was murdered in a targeted drone strike after his messages to her were intercepted by the authorities. In the wake of his death, Safaa pledged to continue his mission. Unaware that she was still being monitored, she shared details of the planned attack with another undercover officer believing him to be Hussein's superior. She disclosed that she intended to carry out an attack on the British Museum in central London. She was then arrested for a travel-related offence. While being held on remand for her initial travel-related offences, she continued plotting from prison. She communicated with her elder sister using coded language, referring to the attack as a Mad Hatter's Tea Party and calling the weapons cakes. She encouraged her sister to carry out the attack in her place. On April 26, 2017, Lynn, her sister, and her mother Mina were seen by police driving around, marking their potential targets for the attack and carrying out reconnaissance around central London landmarks. The next day, they went to a supermarket in Wandsworth and bought a pack of kitchen knives. Their actions were closely tracked by some counter-terrorism officers who intervened before any attack could be launched. Electronic devices seized from their homes revealed a large volume of extremist material and planning-related content. The investigation revealed that all three women, Safaa, Lynn, and Mina, had played active roles in what became the UK's first all-female terrorist planned attack linked to Islamic State. A fourth associate, 21-year-old Khloe Barghouti, was also convicted for failing to report the planned attack. In June 2018, Safa Bular pleaded guilty to preparation of terrorist acts and was sentenced at the Old Bailey to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 16 years. Mina Dich received an extended sentence of 11 years and 9 months, which included 6 years and 9 months in custody, and an additional 5 years on license. Khloe Barghouti was sentenced to 28 months imprisonment. Safaa Boular's trial took place at the Old Bailey in early 2018. She was convicted of 2 counts of preparing acts of terrorism, first by attempting to travel to Syria to join IS, and second by planning the British Museum attack after her travel plans were foiled. During her trial, she wore Western clothing and claimed she had renounced extremism. Her defense argued that she had been groomed by Hussein and heavily influenced by her family. However, the judge rejected the defense's argument that Safaa had been merely manipulated. "She acted with open eyes," the judge said. "She was old enough to make her own decisions and her own choices." He described her as a bright and very articulate person, and warned that she remained a serious risk to the public. Deputy Assistant Commissioner Dean Hayden of Counter-Terrorism Policing remarked, "All three women were filled with hate and toxic ideology and were determined to carry out a terrorist attack. Had they been successful, it could well have resulted in people being murdered or seriously injured." On August 3, 2018, Safaa Boular was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 13 years. As of March 2025, Safaa Boular has served nearly 7 years in prison. She was 18 at the time of the crime and will be eligible for release at age 31 after serving the 13-year minimum term. Number 2, Ashlee Martinson. On March 7, 2015, in the town of Peel, Wisconsin, 17-year-old Ashlee Martinson brutally murdered her 37-year-old stepfather, Thomas "Tony" Ayers, and her 40-year-old mother, Jennifer Ayers, inside their rural family home. At the time of the murders, Ashlee lived in the home with her parents and 3 younger siblings aged 2, 8, and 9. On the morning of March 7, 2015, Ashlee Martinson used a short firearm to murder her stepfather by shooting him once in the neck and once in the head. According to court documents, a confrontation had occurred earlier that day when Tony allegedly took away Ashlee's car keys and cell phone. This made her severely angry, and she decided to carry out the shooting. After shooting her stepfather, Martinson reportedly locked herself in the bathroom with the firearm. When her mother, Jennifer Ayers, forced her way into the room, Martinson brutally used a knife on her for more than 30 times, leading to her death. The younger children in the home were unharmed. She then locked the 3 children in a bedroom with food and a movie and fled the scene with her 22-year-old boyfriend, Ryan Sisko. The couple drove toward Indiana. Martinson and her boyfriend were apprehended the following day in Boone County, Indiana, after her mother's car was flagged as stolen. Officers took her into custody without incident. During questioning, she admitted to murdering both parents, and subsequently her siblings were found safe inside the room in their home. She was charged with 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide and was initially facing life in prison. She pleaded guilty in July 2016 to 2 counts of second-degree intentional homicide as part of a plea agreement. Ashlee Martinson stated in court that her actions were influenced by years of physical and emotional abuse by her stepfather and neglect by her mother. She said Tony Ayers was controlling, physically abusive, and had previously imprisoned her in her room for days as punishment. She also stated her mother failed to protect her from the alleged abuse. In one statement, she stated that she was trapped in the house and did not see any other way out. Prosecutors acknowledged that the home environment was dysfunctional, but emphasized that the killings were premeditated. They presented evidence that Martinson had written an online fiction involving violent fantasies and that she had researched murder methods. The defense presented extensive evidence of Ashlee's troubled upbringing, including reports of abuse, neglect, and trauma. Her attorneys argued that she was a victim of prolonged domestic violence and acted out of desperation and fear. The court sentenced her to 23 years in prison, followed by 17 years of extended supervision. The judge acknowledged the abusive environment, but stated that the brutality of the crimes required a substantial sentence. As of May 2025, Ashlee Martinson has served approximately 10 years and 2 months in prison. She is currently incarcerated at the Taycheedah Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. She was 17 at the time of the crime. She will be 40 years old when released in 2038, if she serves the full 23-year sentence. Number 3, Kristina Lynn Adkins. On August 1, 2006, in Rollin Township, Michigan, 13-year-old Kristina Lynn Adkins fatally poisoned her grandmother, 53-year-old Virginia Bentley, by administering a lethal dose of morphine. Kristina Adkins had been raised by her grandmother since she was born. On the day of the incident, Adkins took morphine pills prescribed to her grandfather and placed them into capsules of her grandmother's medication. Bentley ingested the altered medication and died at home. Initially, Bentley's death was not deemed suspicious. However, in 2008, Adkins confessed to the crime, stating in court that she stole the pill from his grandfather and exchanged it for her grandmother's pills. She admitted that her intent was to murder Bentley. In October 2008, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and possession of morphine. On April 27, 2009, she was sentenced to 30 to 45 years in prison. The judge emphasized on the severity of the crime, noting that Adkins murdered the person who had raised her from infancy. As of May 2025, Christina Lynn Adkins has served approximately 16 years in prison. She is incarcerated at the Huron Valley Complex for Women in Michigan. Her earliest possible release date is December 16, 2037, at which point she will be 45 years old. Number 4, 15-year-old Paris Mayo. On the evening of March 23, 2019, in the town of Ross-on-Wye in Herefordshire, 15-year-old Paris Mayo gave birth alone in the living room of her family home, while her parents and brother were upstairs. The child she delivered, a newborn baby boy, later named Stanley, became the victim of a crime that would shock the nation. Paris Mayo, who was then studying childcare and had experience being around children, did not tell anyone about her pregnancy. She later claimed she did not know she was pregnant until shortly before the birth. According to her testimony in court, she had been dealing with a difficult home environment, especially with her father, Patrick Mayo, who she said made her feel worthless. She described how starting at age 13, she began having intimate relations in an attempt to gain acceptance due to low self-esteem stemming from family issues. On the night of the incident, Mayo gave birth in silence, without the aid of medical professionals, friends, or family. The court later described how she endured labor pains without making any noise, apparently out of fear of waking her parents who were asleep upstairs. At the time, her father, who was seriously ill and on dialysis, was receiving care from Mayo's mother. No one in the house knew she was in labor. Shortly after delivering the baby, Mayo violently assaulted the child. The judge in her case, Mr. Justice Garnham, said the injuries to Stanley were consistent with blunt force trauma, comparable to those seen in high-speed car crashes. The exact method of the initial assault remains unclear, but the judge suspected Mayo may have done some crushing. Despite the severity of the injuries, Stanley survived for at least an hour after birth. At some point after the assault, when he showed signs of life, Mayo stuffed cotton wool balls into his mouth, ultimately suffocating him. She then placed his body inside some item and left it on the doorstep of the family home. The following day, Mayo's mother discovered the body and made an emotional 999 call to emergency services, which was later played during the trial. It was this discovery that brought the crime to light. Within days, Mayo's father passed away unaware of what had transpired in the household just days earlier. A police investigation was quickly launched by West Mercia Police. Mayo initially denied any wrongdoing. She claimed she had not realized she was pregnant until the moment of birth, and that Stanley had hit his head when he fell out during delivery. She said she didn't seek help out of fear that her parents, particularly her father, would be angry and disappointed. During the investigation, experts were brought in to assess Mayo's mental state. One of the prosecution's expert witnesses, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Duncan Harding, faced criticism from the trial judge for showing an apparent bias and stating early in the investigation that Mayo ought to be prosecuted. The case proceeded to trial at Worcester Crown Court, lasting up to 5 weeks. Jurors were presented with the option of returning a verdict of child murder, which would imply that Mayo's mental state was disturbed at the time of the crime. However, They returned a majority verdict of guilty on the charge of murder. During sentencing on June 26, 2023, Mr. Justice Garnham described the case as sad and troubling. He emphasized that although Mayo was immature and frightened, she made the decision to end her Stanley's life. He stated that she knew that she was pregnant and about to give birth about an hour before she did so. The court acknowledged that Mayo had not planned the murder in advance, but determined that she made a conscious decision in the moment. The judge noted aggravating factors, including the extreme vulnerability of the victim and the abuse of trust inherent in the relationship between a mother and her child. In mitigation, her defense counsel described Mayo as a pathetic and vulnerable individual who was overwhelmed by the situation and lacked proper support. Paris Mayo, now 19 at the time of sentencing, was given a life sentence with a minimum term of 12 years for the murder of her son, Stanley. She was sent to a young offender institution. As of March 2025, Paris Mayo has served nearly 2 years of her life sentence. She was 15 at the time of the crime. If released after serving the minimum term, she will be around 27 years old at the time of release. Number 5. 14-year-old Jaime Silvestri. Jaime Silvestri was 14 years old at the time of the incident in Upper Macungie Township, Pennsylvania. She became one of the youngest females ever charged with criminal homicide in Lehigh County. Raised in a suburban household by her parents, Jaime lived a relatively quiet life prior to the crime. Her relationship with 20-year-old Caleb Barnes, a U.S. Army soldier stationed at Fort Meade, Maryland, drew growing concern from her mother, Cheryl Silvestri. On the evening of March 14, 2015, her mother Cheryl drove Jaime and Caleb Barnes to a concert in Scranton, Pennsylvania. After the event, the trio returned home in the early morning hours of March 15th. Surveillance footage later showed the group returning to the family's Upper Macungie residence. Her mother parked the vehicle, a Ford Expedition, in the driveway. According to court testimony, once the vehicle was stopped, Barnes, who was seated in the back seat, attacked Cheryl. Jaime remained in the front passenger seat during the attack. Caleb Barnes brutally used a knife on Cheryl multiple times in the different parts of her body until she died. After the attack, the two individuals moved the body to the back of the SUV. They later drove to a wooded area where they attempted to dispose of Cheryl's body by dragging it into a ditch and covering it with dirt and snow. The body was discovered the next day by authorities after Cheryl was reported missing. The two were arrested. Text messages retrieved from Jaime's phone revealed that the murder had been premeditated. Jaime had repeatedly encouraged Barnes to murder her mother. Messages included phrases such as, "She needs to go," and "I want her gone." These messages, sent in the days leading up to the murder, became central to the prosecution's case. Following their arrest, both Jaime Silvestri and Caleb Barnes were charged in connection with the homicide. Barnes was charged with criminal homicide, abuse of a corpse, and statutory assault. Jaime was charged as an adult with criminal homicide, conspiracy, and related offenses. Legal counsel for Jaime initially attempted to have the case moved to juvenile court, citing her age and mental state. The court declined. Jaime eventually accepted a plea deal and pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. As part of the agreement, she agreed to testify against Barnes. At his trial in 2017, Jaime described the events of the night, stating that Barnes murdered her mother in the SUV's driveway. She told the court that she was inexorably, ineffably in love with Barnes and had urged him to commit the crime. Despite her testimony, Barnes maintained that Jaime was the one who murdered Cheryl after announcing that she was pregnant with his child. He claimed he only helped dispose of the body afterward. The jury rejected Barnes's account. He was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jaime Silvestri was sentenced to 35 years to life in prison. During sentencing, Her attorney described her as a deeply troubled teenager, manipulated by an older man. Prosecutors, however, maintained that Jaime was a willing and active participant in the planning and execution of the crime. During the sentencing phase, Jaime showed visible emotion during parts of the proceedings, particularly when speaking about her mother. She stated in court that although she did not physically murder her mother, her actions and intent were equally responsible. Following her sentencing, Jaime was incarcerated at SCI Muncie, a state correctional institution in Pennsylvania that houses female inmates. In 2019, at age 18, she sought a new trial through her attorneys. They argued that her previous legal representation failed to present adequate evidence of her psychological condition and background, leading to what they described as a distorted perception of her as manipulative and savvy beyond her years. Her former attorney defended his work, stating that he had presented expert witnesses in an attempt to have her tried as a juvenile. He noted that once the judge refused to transfer the case, his legal options were limited. The district attorney's office did not support a reduced charge or lesser plea. As of March 2025, Jaime Silvestri remains incarcerated at SCI Muncie. She has served approximately 10 years of her 35 years to life sentence. She will not be eligible for parole until she has served at least 35 years, making her earliest possible release date around 2050, when she will be 49 years old. Number 6. 18-year-old Trinity Shockley. On February 14, 2025, in Mooresville, Indiana, 18-year-old Trinity Shockley was arrested and charged in connection with a planned school shooting at Mooresville High School. Authorities stated that the plot was scheduled to occur on Valentine's Day, exactly 7 years after the deadly Parkland school shooting in Florida. No individuals were physically harmed, but the incident raised alarm due to its extensive planning and the intent behind it. Trinity Shockley was also a senior at Mooresville High School. There were no victims to the attack, as the planned attack was stopped before it could occur. According to law enforcement, Shockley had been planning the attack for over a year and had shared intentions with others via Discord. The investigation began when an anonymous tip was submitted through the Sandy Hook Promise Say Something anonymous tip line on Monday, February 10, 2025. The tipster reported that a friend had access to an AR-15 rifle, had just purchased a bulletproof vest, and had expressed admiration for Nicholas Cruz, the perpetrator of the 2018 Parkland school shooting. The tipster also indicated that Shockley had made threatening statements, including "Parkland Part 2" and "I'm shooting him," referring to a friend who was allegedly among the planned targets. The FBI traced the Discord messages back to an IP address registered to Shockley. This information was shared with the Morgan County Sheriff's Office and subsequently relayed to the Mooresville Metropolitan Police Department. Authorities acted quickly. On February 11th, school officials were notified and a proactive response plan was initiated for the following school day. On February 12th, police executed a search warrant at Shockley's residence. Inside, they found notebooks filled with writings about mass shootings, including a statement that read, "I cannot stop thinking about Nicholas. I love you, Nicholas." A large collage of mass shooters, including Nicholas Cruz, Dylan Roof, and Randy Stair, was taped to a wall in Shockley's bedroom. 3 safety pin-style buttons featuring the same individuals were attached to the backpack Shockley carried to school. The backpack also contained notebooks featuring swastikas, the word "murder," and repeated phrases such as "die, die, die." Investigators also found several AR-15 magazines, a box of .40 caliber bullets, and a soft body armor vest in a room belonging to Shockley's father. While police found ammunition and gear, the affidavit did not confirm that a firearm was present or in Shockley's immediate possession at the time of the arrest. Before the investigation, Shockley had been experiencing multiple personal crises in the months leading up to the incident. According to court documents, her mother had recently passed away. In a breakdown at school on February 11th, Shockley reportedly expressed feelings of despair and fear about her future. The death of her mother appeared to be a significant emotional trigger. Additionally, she had been injured in an earlier car accident caused by a drunk driver. After learning that the driver had died, Shockley blamed herself for the incident, according to the probable cause affidavit. The same day of the breakdown, Shockley visited a school counselor and disclosed an intimate attraction and emotional connection to Nicholas Cruz. She allegedly told the counselor that she wanted to have children with Cruz and had even named them. The counselor reported this to the school administration, and law enforcement took immediate action. Shockley was arrested without incident and taken to the Morgan County Jail, where she was held without bond. During her initial court appearance, she reportedly asked about how long she would be in jail if no one paid her bond. The judge explained that she would remain in custody until her case was resolved, unless bond was paid. Shockley was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit intimidation, and 2 terrorism-related offenses. Authorities praised the tipster, school officials, and law enforcement agencies for their swift and coordinated response, which prevented a potential tragedy. As of May 2025, Trinity Shockley remains in custody at the Morgan County Jail awaiting trial. She has served approximately 3 months in pre-trial detention. If convicted on all charges, she faces decades in prison. Should she be sentenced to the maximum potential prison term, she would likely remain incarcerated into her late 40s or beyond. Number 7. Marisella Diaz. On November 10, 2009, 15-year-old Marisella Diaz and her 19-year-old boyfriend Alexander Salgado murdered 16-year-old Jasmine Guevara in rural Hanson County, South Dakota. Marisella Diaz and Alexander Salgado met in Indiana when Diaz was 13 and Salgado was 19. Their relationship was marked by abuse. Salgado physically assaulted Diaz and was involved in one of her attempted self-harm. Despite intervention from Child Protection Services, Diaz continued to see Salgado, and they had a child together in July 2009. In October 2009, they moved to South Dakota. While in South Dakota, they met 16-year-old Jasmine Guevara. Although Diaz suspected that Jasmine Guevara and Salgado were secretly having an affair, the couple instead made plans to murder her and burn the evidence. On the day of the incident, she asked Guevara for a ride for herself and Alexander Salgado to Walmart to purchase lighter fluid under the guise of having a cookout or bonfire. Instead of the cookout, the 2 lovers lured Jasmine Guevara to a remote area. Once there, they brutally used the knife on Jasmine Guevara multiple times and placed her in the trunk of her car. The vehicle was then set on fire while Guevara was still alive. The same lighter that she drove them to buy was the exact one they used in lighting her car up. An autopsy confirmed that she died from smoke inhalation. Authorities responded to reports of a car fire and discovered Guevara's body in the trunk. Diaz and Salgado were arrested shortly after. Salgado pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in August 2010 and received a life sentence without parole. Diaz's case proceeded to trial. She was initially charged in juvenile court but was later transferred to adult court. Her defense argued that she was under Salgado's influence and highlighted her age and history of abuse. The prosecution presented evidence of premeditation and active participation in the murder. In January 2015, Diaz was convicted of first-degree murder and kidnapping. She was sentenced to 80 years in prison. As of March 2025, Marisella Diaz remains incarcerated in South Dakota. She was 15 at the time of the crime and will be eligible for release in her 90s, effectively serving a life sentence. Number 8. Megan Dakota Grunwald. On January 30, 2014, 17-year-old Megan Dakota Grunwald was involved in a deadly crime spree that resulted in the death of Utah County Sheriff Corey Ride and the injury of Deputy Greg Sherwood. Grunwald was driving a pickup truck with her 27-year-old boyfriend, Jose Angel Garcia Jorregui, as a passenger. Officer Ride stopped to assist the couple, believing their vehicle was disabled. After checking out the vehicle, Officer Ride went back to his car and said was checking out stuff on his computer. While Ride was in his patrol car, Garcia Jorregui then brought out a firearm and shot Officer Ride up to 7 times. While still firing the shots, Megan Grunwald, the driver of their truck, sped away, leaving Officer Ride in the pool of his own blood, and later he died from the injuries sustained from the wounds. Grunwald then led law enforcement on a high-speed chase through multiple counties. During the pursuit, Garcia Jorregui, her boyfriend, again shot and injured Deputy Sherwood. The chase only ended when her boyfriend was shot and subsequently died during the chase. Grunwald was arrested and initially convicted in 2015 on multiple charges, including aggravated murder, and sentenced to life in prison. However, in 2020, the Utah Supreme Court overturned her aggravated murder conviction due to errors in jury instructions. In 2021, she accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to manslaughter and aggravated assault on a police officer. She was sentenced to 2 consecutive terms of 1 to 15 years, totaling a maximum of 30 years in prison. As of May 2025, she has served approximately 11 years of her sentence. She remains incarcerated in Utah. Her eligibility for parole will be determined by the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole. Number 9. Morgan E. Geyser. On May 31, 2014 in Waukesha, Wisconsin, 12-year-old Morgan E. Geyser and her classmate Anissa Wire lured their friend Peyton Leutner, who was also 12, into a wooded area and brutally used a knife on her for over 19 times. The attack was part of a plan to appease the fictional character, Slender Man. Leutner survived the attack. On the day of the incident, Geyser and Wire invited Leutner for a sleepover. The next morning, they took her to a nearby park under the pretense of playing hide-and-seek. In the woods, Geyser took out a kitchen knife and used it on Leutner, while Wire encouraged her to keep going. After the attack, the girls then left Leutner, who managed to crawl to a nearby path, where a cyclist found her and called 911. Leutner was then hospitalized with life-threatening injuries, but miraculously, she survived. She later gave up the names of the attackers, and they were arrested. During police interviews, Geyser and Wire stated they believed that murdering Leutner would make them servants of Slender Man and prevent him from harming their families. Geyser was later diagnosed with an early-onset childhood mental disorder. Both girls were charged as adults. In 2017, Geyser pleaded guilty to attempted first-degree intentional homicide and was found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. She was sentenced to 40 years in a mental health institution. Wire received a 25-year sentence under similar terms. As of May 2025, Morgan Geyser has served approximately 11 years of her sentence. In January 2025, a judge granted her conditional release from the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. However, as of April 2025, her release has been delayed due to concerns about the proximity of her proposed residence to the victim's home. A new release plan is under review, with a hearing scheduled for early June 2025. Number 10. 17-year-old Janine Gonzalez. Janine Gonzalez, 17 years old at the time of the crime, was originally from Buffalo, New York. She was the younger sister of a man who had been romantically involved with 2 women, 30-year-old Ashlee Bocanegra and 27-year-old Antonetta Stevens. In August 2024, Gonzalez had recently relocated to Georgia, where she was residing with Stevens, who was engaged to her brother. On the afternoon of August 11, 2024, at approximately 1 p.m., law enforcement officers responded to a call from an apartment complex near 2900 Buford Drive in Gwinnett County, Georgia. Investigators later determined that earlier that day, Gonzalez and Stevens had used Stevens' fiance's phone to lure Ashlee Bocanegra, her brother's mistress, to the residence. Bocanegra, a mother of one, arrived at the location unaware of the premeditated plan awaiting her. Upon her arrival, Bocanegra was immediately confronted by both Gonzalez and Stevens. A physical altercation started on the road to their home. Stevens led the attack while Gonzalez filmed the incident on her phone. During the confrontation, the two women beat Bocanegra and dragged her by her hair down a street. Eyewitnesses and video evidence later showed Stevens yelling threats, including, "I will murder you," during the assault. Gonzalez's participation in the physical violence appeared limited to pulling Bocanegra's hair, but her involvement in orchestrating and facilitating the encounter was confirmed by authorities. After the altercation, despite her injuries, Bocanegra managed to get to a hospital. She was admitted with severe trauma, but her condition quickly worsened. She died just hours later. The hospital alerted local law enforcement, who then initiated an investigation into the incident. It was also reported that her cell phone had been taken during the incident. Following the attack, Gonzalez and Stevens were not immediately located. However, investigators quickly identified both women as suspects. They were found at their apartment later the same day and taken in for questioning. During her police interview, Stevens expressed minimal remorse, stating, "She died? Okay, wow, I'm so sorry about that. That was not my intention," while also trying to blame the victim. Gonzalez, by contrast, initially laughed during her interview and appeared surprised upon learning she was being charged, and later defending herself by saying, "All I did was pull her hair." Both women were arrested and charged with aggravated battery, robbery, and felony murder. The case proceeded to trial in early 2025. The charges were later reduced through a plea agreement to voluntary manslaughter and robbery by force. Gonzalez and Stevens each pled guilty and were sentenced to 20 years in prison. There was no publicized appeal filed by either defendant. During sentencing, neither woman expressed significant emotion. Gonzalez, still a teenager at the time, appeared stunned by the outcome, but did not issue a formal statement. In court, her attorney emphasized her age and argued she had not intended to cause fatal harm. The judge, however, upheld the sentence based on Gonzalez's role in luring the victim and facilitating the attack. During the trial proceedings, members of Bocanegra's family expressed grief over the loss. Her mother described Ashlee as a caring daughter and devoted mother who did not deserve such a senseless and violent end. Following sentencing, both women were transferred to Arendale State Prison, a facility for women located in Alto, Georgia. There, Gonzalez began serving her sentence alongside Stevens. According to Department of Corrections records, Gonzalez did not speak to media or issue a public apology. No family statements were released on her behalf. As of March 2025, Janine Gonzalez remains incarcerated at Arendale State Prison. She has served less than 1 year of her 20-year sentence. She was 17 years old at the time of the crime and will be approximately 37 years old upon completing her sentence, assuming she serves the full term without early release. Number 11. 15-year-old Krisha Straoud was a schoolgirl living in Walker, Newcastle. She had a history of childhood instability and had been using some hard substances since the age of 8. Reports presented during her trial noted that she lacked structure and routine at home, had witnessed violence growing up, and frequently acted without clear boundaries. Despite her young age, Straoud became involved in a violent and premeditated criminal act that would result in 1 death and 1 severe injury. On the evening of April 27, 2023, at a residence on Elliott Drive in Felling, Gateshead, Straoud orchestrated a fatal home invasion. The target was Gary Belfield, a 40-year-old man who had been in a relationship with Straoud's half-sister. The incident stemmed from a dispute over a dog that Straoud believed rightfully belonged to her half-sister, but had remained with Belfield after their separation. Straoud arranged for 2 17-year-old males, Leandro Lopes and Jordan Tams to carry out the assault. The two arrived at the home wearing masks and armed with knives and a screwdriver. At approximately 8 p.m., they forced their way inside while Straoud remained outside. Inside the living room, Gary Belfield and his son, Luke Williams, aged 21, were preparing to leave after eating a takeaway meal. Luke Williams was the first to encounter the attackers. As he approached the hallway, he was struck in the face, then used a knife on multiple times. Williams managed to escape the home and fled to a nearby petrol station where he shouted for help and collapsed covered in blood. Staff at the station called emergency services. Inside the home, Gary Belfield was subjected to a sustained and brutal attack. He was used a knife on 11 times. Several of the wounds caused internal damage to his vital organs and major blood vessels. Despite efforts by emergency responders, Belfield was declared dead at the scene. Straoud was seen on CCTV in the area during the time of the attack. In subsequent conversations, she bragged about the incident, claiming to have seen it through a window, describing the scene with graphic detail. All three were arrested shortly after the incident. During police interviews, Straoud denied orchestrating the attack, insisting she was not involved in planning or encouraging it. However, the evidence presented at Newcastle Crown Court demonstrated otherwise. Prosecutors argued successfully that she was as culpable as the individuals who entered the home, citing her role in initiating and planning the crime. In January 2025, Krisha Straoud, now 16, was found guilty of murder and attempted murder. The presiding judge sentenced Straoud to detention at Her Majesty's pleasure, the juvenile equivalent of a life sentence with a minimum term of 17 years before parole eligibility. Her co-defendants, Leandro Lopes and Jordan Tams, both 17 at the time, were also convicted of murder and attempted murder. Each received a minimum sentence of 26 years in custody. During the sentencing hearing, Straoud appeared tearful, but did not make any formal statement of remorse. As of March 2025, Krisha Straoud. She has served approximately 2 years in custody, including time on remand. She will be eligible for parole in 2040, by which time she will be 32 years old. Number 12, 16-year-old Khloe Coplan. On November 6, 2023, in the small town of Gordon, Nebraska, 16-year-old Khloe Coplan Anderson, who was a high school student residing with her parents in a small town in Sheridan County, gave birth alone in her bedroom. Within moments of delivering her newborn son, she took a kitchen knife and used it on the child, leading to his death few minutes after. The baby's name was never publicly released. According to the arrest affidavit, Khloe had concealed her pregnancy from everyone, including her family. Her parents, unaware of the situation until the delivery, were in the house at the time. They believed the child died from natural cause based on Khloe's initial statements, but on a closer look, they sensed a foul play. Her father called 911, reporting that the child was not breathing, and it was too late to save him. When law enforcement arrived at the home, Khloe's mother broke down and told officers that Khloe had hurt him. She pointed to visible marks on the child's body and indicated suspicion that a knife was used for the actions. She also told officers she had seen her daughter take a knife from the kitchen drawer earlier that day, which was now missing. Officers initially conducted a visual search, but did not locate the weapon. Later that same day, they were called back to the residence when Khloe's father discovered a bloodied kitchen knife hidden in his daughter's closet. That knife was consistent with the injury to the victim. Authorities arrested Khloe and charged her initially with first-degree murder, child abuse resulting in death, and use of a deadly weapon to commit a felony. The case quickly drew attention statewide due to the nature of the crime and the age of those involved. As the investigation continued, Khloe's defense team presented mitigating factors. Her attorney told the court that Khloe had suffered abuse by family members and that the trauma had contributed to her mental state. Two defense witnesses testified that Khloe was diagnosed with multiple mental health conditions, including post-traumatic stress disorder and major depressive disorder. He also disclosed that Khloe became pregnant at the age of 15, and that the baby's father was 19 at the time. In Nebraska, intimate activity between a person aged 19 and someone aged 15 or younger constitutes assault under state law. Court filing stated that no adult in Khloe's life had intervened or provided her with support during her pregnancy, and she had not received any prenatal care. She gave birth alone in her bedroom, without notifying anyone. In August 2024, Khloe Coplan Anderson reached a plea agreement with prosecutors. She pleaded no contest to a single count of second-degree murder in exchange for the state dropping the original charge of first-degree murder, as well as the two additional charges. Under Nebraska law, second-degree murder is punishable by 20 years to life in prison. On April 24, 2025, Khloe Coplan Anderson, now 18, appeared in Sheridan County District Court for sentencing. The judge sentenced her to 35 to 60 years in prison. She was given credit for the time she had already served in jail, over 500 days. During the sentencing, the defense reiterated the mental health challenges Khloe faced and the lack of intervention or support from adults. However, the court determined that the crime warranted significant prison time given the intentional murder of an innocent victim. Khloe did not speak during sentencing. As of March 2025, Khloe Coplan Anderson has served just over 500 days in prison. She will be eligible for parole after serving 35 years. She was 16 years old at the time of the crime and will be at least 51 years old by the time she becomes eligible for release. Number 13, Natasha Ellis. On May 23, 2019, 15-year-old Natasha Ellis carried out a fatal stabbing in New Carlisle, Ohio. The attack resulted in the death of 36-year-old Ashlee A. Moore and injuries to Moore's husband and 17-year-old son. Ellis, then 15, planned the attack with her 13-year-old friend, Moore's daughter. They discussed the plan via Instagram messages leading up to the incident. On the night of May 23rd, Ellis entered the Moore residence on North Church Street and brutally attacked Ashlee A. Moore multiple times, resulting in her death. She also attacked Moore's husband, Paul Greer, and their 17-year-old son, though both of them survived. Ellis was initially charged with aggravated murder, attempted murder, and felonious assault. She pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity but was later found competent to stand trial. In June 2020, Ellis entered a plea deal, pleading guilty to murder and attempted murder. The other charges were dropped. In July 2020, Judge Douglas Rastatter sentenced Ellis to 15 years to life for the murder charge and an additional 7 to 10 years for attempted murder to be served consecutively. This results in a minimum of 22 years in prison. As of May 2025, Natasha Ellis has served approximately 5 years of her sentence. She is incarcerated at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. Number 14, Samantha Heath. On January 26, 2014, in Allenstown, New Hampshire, 18-year-old Samantha Heath attempted to murder her close friend, Andrea Jasmine Halverson, who was also 18 years old. Samantha Heath and Andrea Halverson had been close friends for long, and on the day of the attack, Heath invited Halverson to Bear Brook State Park. Once in a secluded area, Heath brutally used a knife on Halverson 16 times, nearly leading to her death. A passing vehicle interrupted the assault, prompting Heath to flee. Halverson was found and received emergency medical treatment, surviving the attack. Following the attack, Heath was arrested and agreed to testify against her boyfriend, Kyle Buffum, who was identified as the mastermind behind the attack. Investigators uncovered over 70 pages of text messages between Heath and Buffum, detailing plans to murder Halverson and another individual, as well as intentions to commit additional crimes. In 2014, Heath pleaded guilty to attempted first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison, with the possibility of 5 years being suspended for good behavior and demonstrated rehabilitation. Buffum was later convicted of accomplice to attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and criminal solicitation. Number 15. Morgan Amanda Leopard. On April 30, 2008, in Glen St. Mary, Florida, 15-year-old Morgan Amanda Leopard and her 22-year-old boyfriend Toby Lowry were involved in the murder of 66-year-old disabled man James Thomas. The incident triggered a multi-state manhunt. On the morning of that day, Morgan Leopard and Toby Lowry arrived at the home of James Thomas, a man who had taken Lowry in as a guest weeks earlier. According to court records, Lowry and Leopard planned to steal Thomas's car to flee the state. Lowry attacked Thomas with a metal rod, beating him severely. Leopard later admitted to helping tie Thomas up with duct tape and assisting in cleaning the crime scene. The couple placed a plastic bag over Thomas's head and suffocated him and left him. After the murder, Lowry and Leopard stole Thomas's vehicle and fled Florida. His body was later found inside the house after a concerned family members requested a welfare check. Neighbors reported that Thomas had mobility issues and walked with a cane. One neighbor told police that he was the kindest man and he didn't deserve the treatment he got from the kids. The crime scene raised immediate red flags due to blood evidence, signs of a struggle, and the victim's missing vehicle. Surveillance footage later showed the couple attempting to withdraw money from the victim's bank account. A nationwide manhunt began, and the FBI added both suspects to their most wanted list. Authorities used ATM activity and sightings to track their movements. The pair were finally arrested in San Antonio, Texas, on May 5, 2008, just 5 days after the murder. They were found sleeping in the stolen vehicle. Morgan Leopard was extradited to Florida to face charges of first-degree murder, armed robbery, and grand theft auto. Initially, prosecutors considered seeking the death penalty for Lowry, but not for Leopard due to her age. In a plea agreement, Leopard pled guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 40 years in prison in 2011. During the hearings, the prosecution emphasized her active participation in the crime. Prosecutors also introduced evidence of Leopard's writings and drawings expressing interest in criminal behavior, which they argued showed premeditation. The defense portrayed Leopard as a vulnerable teenager under the influence of an older, controlling man. Her attorneys pointed to her diagnosis of bipolar disorder and depression, along with a history of abuse. They argued that she was manipulated and coerced by Lowry. She did not testify at trial, but issued a written apology expressing regret for her role in the crime. Lowry was later convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. As of May 2025, Morgan Leopard remains incarcerated at a Florida correctional facility. She has served 14 years as of her sentence. She was 15 years old at the time of the crime. Under her 40-year sentence, she will be eligible for release at age 55. Number 16. Rachel Marie Wade. On April 14, 2009, 19-year-old Rachel Marie Wade fatally murdered 18-year-old Sarah Rose Ludeman in Pinellas Park, Florida. The incident occurred because both girls were involved in a months-long romantic rivalry over the same man, 19-year-old Josh Camacho. Rachel had previously dated Camacho. After their breakup, Camacho began a relationship with Sarah Ludeman. The rivalry between Rachel and Ludeman escalated over several months. Police had already intervened in 6 incidents involving Ludeman and Camacho due to public arguments and suspected domestic abuse. Camacho had punched Ludeman during one argument, but she declined to press charges. Rachel also began harassing Ludeman shortly after learning about her relationship with Camacho. She left multiple hostile and threatening voicemails for Ludeman. Ludeman also reported that Wade would show up at her workplace to provoke her. In one incident, she told police that Rachel had called her repeatedly and left threats on her voicemail. On the night of the murder, Rachel was at home alone, reportedly waiting to hear from Camacho. Meanwhile, Camacho was at his house with Sarah Ludeman playing video games. While outside walking her dog, Wade claimed Ludeman drove by and yelled, "Stay away from my man!" Rachel said she felt afraid and called a former boyfriend, Javier Laboy, who invited her to his house. She grabbed her purse, took a steak knife from a kitchen drawer, and left. Around 11 p.m., she arrived at Laboy's house where she met him and a friend. At the same time, she sent Camacho messages. According to witness testimony, Wade then made threats via speakerphone, telling Camacho and Ludeman that she was going to murder them. Shortly before midnight, Ludeman left Camacho's house with his sister to drive to McDonald's. At a stop sign, they ran into a friend who informed them that Rachel was at Laboy's house. Ludeman decided to confront her. On their way to the house, they also received more threat messages from Rachel. Still, Ludeman pulled up at Laboy's house and spotted Rachel talking to Laboy and his friend. On getting there, Rachel claimed Ludeman abruptly braked, nearly hitting her, and then exited her vehicle with her fists raised. She said she was scared and immediately used the knife on Ludeman once in the shoulder and once in another body part. However, witnesses including Camacho's sister testified that Ludeman never exited the vehicle. They claimed Wade approached the van and attacked unprovoked. After the attack, Wade reportedly threw the knife over a neighbor's house and said calmly, "I'm done." Mortally wounded, Ludeman managed to call Camacho, telling him that she'd been stabbed. He ran home and informed her father. Together, they rushed to the scene. Ludeman was transported to Northside Hospital, where she died from her wound at 2:20 a.m. Shortly after, Rachel was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. On September 3, 2010, she was sentenced to 27 years in state prison. As of March 2025, she remains incarcerated at the Lowell Correctional Institution's Lowell Annex in Florida. Wade was 19 years old at the time of the crime and will be 46 upon completing her sentence. Number 17. Leslie Garcia Juarez. On the morning of December 29, 2020, Gwinnett County Police responded to a report of a shooting at an apartment complex on Satellite Boulevard in Duluth. Upon arrival, officers found 22-year-old Adaf Amable suffering from at least one gunshot wound. He was transported to a local hospital, where he later died from his injuries. The investigators determined that the shooting was not a random act, but appeared to be domestic-related. They identified 16-year-old Leslie Garcia Juarez as a suspect. She was arrested on December 31, 2020, and charged as an adult with aggravated assault and felony murder. Nearly a year before she was caught, Leslie was also implicated in another crime she committed on December 30, 2019, when the body of 19-year-old Osiel Montano was discovered in an abandoned apartment at the Spring Lake apartment complex on Chase Common Drive in Norcross. Montano had also died from a single gunshot wound to the head. The Norcross Police Department requested assistance from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in the homicide investigation. After a lengthy investigation, they linked Leslie Garcia Juarez to Montano's death. On March 19, 2021, while she was already in custody for the 2020 shooting, she was charged with felony murder and aggravated assault in connection to Montano's death. In both cases, she was charged as an adult. As of May 2025, Leslie Garcia Juarez has been in custody since December 31, 2020, and has served approximately 4 years and 5 months. Number 18. Emma Cusack. On June 29, 2023, 17-year-old Emma Cusack fatally shot 36-year-old Charlie Satrustegui in a hotel room at the Luxor Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada. Emma Cusack and Charlie Satrustegui met approximately 2 months prior to the incident through the dating app Bumble. They maintained periodic communication before agreeing to meet in person during Satrústagi's visit to Las Vegas from Glendale, California. On June 28, 2023, Satrústagi picked up Cusack and brought her to his room at the Luxor Hotel and Casino. They consumed a lot of drinks together, reportedly taking about 8 shots of vodka each. Later that night, Satrústagi showed Cusack his firearm, which he kept in the room. In the early hours of June 29th, Satrústagi allegedly asked Cusack to leave the room due to her persistent coughing. An argument started between them during which Cusack claimed she felt threatened. She took Satrústagi's firearm and shot him twice in the head. After the shooting, she took his wallet, keys, and multiple phones. She disposed of the firearm in a trash can near Rainbow Boulevard and Charleston Boulevard. Later that morning, she called the police, stating that she had shot someone and was willing to turn herself in. Upon receiving her call, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department officers responded to the 12th floor of the Luxor Hotel, where they found Satrústagi deceased from gunshot wounds to the head. Cusack was taken into custody on July 26, 2023, her 18th birthday. During her arrest, she reportedly stated that she didn't mean to shoot him. Initially, she told investigators that she acted in self-defense, fearing an attack from Satrústagi. However, when confronted with inconsistencies in her account, she admitted to taking the firearm with the intent to rob him, stating that she was desperate, had no money, and did not want to return to jail. She was then charged with open murder, robbery, and grand larceny of a motor vehicle. She was held without bail at the Clark County Detention Center. In September 2024, as part of a plea agreement, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder with the use of a deadly weapon. Judge Jacqueline Bluth sentenced her to a prison term ranging from 11 to 27.5 years. She is also required to pay over $15,000 in restitution to the victim's family. As of May 2025, Emma Cusack has served approximately 1 year and 10 months of her sentence. She will be eligible for parole in 2033 at the age of 28. Number 19. Kristi Parisian. On October 17, 2021, in Miramar, Florida, 17-year-old Kristi Parisian participated in the premeditated murder of 18-year-old Dwight D.J. Grant, a fellow student at Miramar High School. The crime was orchestrated alongside classmates Andre Clements, who was also 17 at the time, and 16-year-old Jaslyn Smith. The motive behind the murder came from a romantic rivalry. Clements was reportedly upset that Grant had engaged in a consensual relationship with his ex-girlfriend. According to police reports, Parisian lured Grant from his apartment with the promise of an intimate bedroom encounter. Once in a stairwell of the apartment complex, Clements and Smith ambushed him. Clements attacked Grant with a sword and a knife and inflicted fatal wounds to his body parts. Smith assisted in restraining Grant during the assault. After the attack, the trio attempted to conceal the crime by disposing of the body behind nearby bushes and attempting to clean the scene. Shortly after, they were arrested and charged. The investigation revealed incriminating evidence, including surveillance footage and text messages. Messages from Clements to Parisian included incriminating statements. Parisian and Smith were arrested and charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and tampering with evidence. In August 2024, Parisian pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and tampering with evidence. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison, followed by 10 years of probation. Smith received an identical sentence. Clements later pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and received a 40-year prison sentence, followed by lifetime probation. As of May 2025, Kristi Parisian has served approximately 9 months of her 25-year sentence. She remains incarcerated in a Florida state prison. If she serves her full term, she will be 42 years old upon release. Number 20. Shaila Camila Hernandez Rivas. On February 19, 2023, in the Stead neighborhood of Reno, Nevada, 14-year-old Camila fatally stabbed 14-year-old Khloe Edwards during a prearranged physical altercation. The incident was captured on multiple video recordings. The confrontation came from ongoing tensions between the two teenagers, reportedly involving social media exchanges. On the day of the incident, Khloe Edwards, accompanied by her older sister and friends, went to Hernandez Rivas's residence on Soft Winds Drive to engage in a physical fight. Shortly after the altercation began, Camila produced a knife and used it on Edwards' body parts. Edwards' companions immediately transported her to their nearby home on Red Baron Boulevard, where she collapsed in the front yard. Emergency responders were contacted, but they were unable to revive her. Camila was arrested and charged shortly after. In December 2023, she pleaded guilty to challenge to fight with a deadly weapon, resulting in death. During sentencing in February 2024, Washoe County District Judge imposed a 50-year prison term, mandating a minimum of 20 years before eligibility for parole. The judge cited the severity of the crime and the availability of video evidence as factors influencing the sentence. Prosecutors highlighted her behavior following the incident, including a recorded statement where she declared that she carried out the act as indicative of a lack of remorse. The defense presented testimony from a forensic psychologist who assessed her as emotionally and cognitively immature, with a mental age of an 11-year-old. The psychologist also noted a history of depression and substance use, beginning in early adolescence. Her mother testified that her daughter was not the aggressor and suggested that evidence supporting this claim was not fully considered during the proceedings. As of May 2025, Shaila Camila Hernandez Rivas has served approximately 2 years and 3 months of her sentence. She remains incarcerated in Nevada and will be eligible for parole in 2043 at the age of 34. Number 21. Nicole Jackson. On June 1, 2021, 15-year-old Nicole Jackson Maldonado engaged in an armed standoff with law enforcement in Deltona, Florida. The incident began when Jackson and a 12-year-old boy escaped from the Florida United Methodist Children's Home. They then broke into a nearby residence where they discovered firearms and ammunition. Inside the home, they vandalized property and armed themselves with the homeowner's weapons. When Volusia County Sheriff's deputies arrived in response to the burglary, they were met with gunfire from the occupants. Jackson Maldonado was identified as the primary shooter during the standoff. After multiple attempts to negotiate a peaceful surrender, Jackson Maldonado exited the house and fired a shotgun at deputies, prompting them to return fire, and subsequently injured her. She was arrested and charged in adult court with multiple offenses, including attempted first-degree murder of a law enforcement officer, armed burglary, and criminal mischief. Initially, she rejected a plea deal offered in July 2022. However, on January 27, 2023, just days before her scheduled trial, she accepted a plea agreement. Under the terms of the deal, she pleaded no contest to the charges and was sentenced to 20 years in prison, followed by 40 years of probation. Her co-defendant, the 12-year-old boy, was then prosecuted in juvenile court. He entered a no-contest plea and was sentenced to a juvenile facility with the possibility of release before his 21st birthday. As of May 2025, Nicole Jackson Maldonado has served approximately 2 years and 4 months of her 20-year sentence. She remains incarcerated in a Florida state prison. Given the length of her sentence, she will be 35 years old upon release, followed by a 40-year probation period extending into her mid-70s. Number 22. 15-year-old Sienna Pecor. Sienna Rose Pecor was 15 when she walked out of her house, took her mother's silver Toyota Corolla without permission, and began racing west on Mason Street. In the front passenger seat was 17-year-old Cruz Beltran. They both had no driver's license between them and no plan except speed. Traffic cameras later showed the Corolla weaving through evening traffic at more than 110 miles per hour in a 35-mile zone. Seconds before 6:30 p.m., the traffic light at Mason and Oneida turned yellow. Pecor, believing she could beat the signal, accelerated. A northbound SUV lawfully entered the intersection. The Corolla struck the SUV broadside with catastrophic force. Investigators calculated impact speeds of around 116 to 123 miles per hour. The Toyota folded. Cruz Beltran died at the scene from massive blunt force trauma. 2 occupants of the SUV were injured, but survived. Green Bay police, arriving within minutes, found Pecor dazed outside the wreckage. Bodycam footage recorded the officer asking why she had been driving so fast. Pecor answered that she did not know. She denied racing or being pressured and said she did not believe she had surpassed 100 miles per hour. A preliminary breath test showed no alcohol. Officers soon learned she had no license and that the vehicle was listed to her mother, who thought the car was still in their driveway. Crash scene reconstruction relied on Walgreens and Shell gas station security cameras. Analysts measured that the Corolla traveled more than triple the posted limit. Prosecutors later emphasized that the distance from Pecor's home to the crash site was less than 2 miles, stating that the fatal speed was reached in under 60 seconds. Because Wisconsin law places homicide-related charges in adult court for defendants 10 and older, Pecor was booked into the Brown County Jail. The complaint charged first-degree reckless homicide, first-degree recklessly endangering safety, hit and run involving death, and taking a vehicle without consent. A judge later approved housing her in an isolated juvenile block within the adult facility. In February 2024, after negotiations, Pecor pleaded guilty to second-degree reckless homicide and second-degree recklessly endangering safety. The remaining counts were dismissed, but read in for sentencing. At the plea hearing, she said only, "I accept responsibility." Her sentencing took place on the 12th of April 2024 before Brown County Circuit. The judge sentenced her to 9 years in prison, citing Pecor's age, unstable home life, and remorse. Pecor addressed the court through tears. "I understand there are consequences for every action, and I will carry this forever. My intentions were never to hurt anyone. I am not the person this makes me out to be." Cruz Beltran's family filled the gallery. 2 sisters read statements describing birthdays and holidays spent without him. His mother, Michelle Saldana, turned to Pecor and said, "I forgive you because we all make mistakes, but the hole in my heart will never close." Her sentencing condition includes obtaining a GED, maintaining full-time employment, 300 hours of community service, speaking to high school assemblies about reckless driving, and paying $13,285.19 in restitution. As of May 2025, Sienna Pecor has served just over 2 years of her 9-year sentence at Taycheedah Correctional Institution. She remains incarcerated with 6 years and 10 months remaining in her prison term, after which she will begin 6 years of extended supervision. Number 1. Carly Gregg. On March 19, 2024, in Brandon, Mississippi, Ashlee Smiley, a 40-year-old high school math teacher, was at home when her 14-year-old daughter, Carly Gregg, took out a firearm from their bedroom and fatally shot her. The incident occurred after Ashlee confronted Carly about her use of certain substances, leading to a heated argument and finally resulting in her death. After the shooting, she invited a friend over and showed her mother's body. She then lured her stepfather, Heath Smiley, home through text messages, intending to ambush him. Upon his arrival, Carly shot him in the shoulder, but he survived the attack and managed to disarm her. During her trial, the defense argued she suffered from mental health issues, including depression and hearing voices. However, after 4.5 days of trial, Carly was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Number 2. Isabella Guzman. The relationship between 18-year-old Isabella and her mother, Yunmi Hoy, had not been going well, escalating to the point where she sought police assistance due to her daughter's increasingly threatening behavior. On the day of the murder, Guzman sent her mother an email stating, "You will pay." That evening, in August 2013, as her mother showered, Guzman's stepfather, Ryan Hoy, heard a commotion and his wife calling his name. Rushing upstairs, he found the bathroom door blocked. After briefly retreating to call 911, he returned to see Isabella exiting the bathroom, holding an object and walking past him without a word. Inside, Yunmi Hoy lay lifeless, having been brutally injured 79 times. Immediately after the incident, Isabella fled, but was apprehended the following day. During her trial, she pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Psychiatrists diagnosed her with schizophrenia, noting she experienced severe delusions, including believing her mother was not her real mother. In 2014, the court accepted her plea and committed her to the Colorado Mental Health Institute. In 2020, she sought release, claiming her mental health had improved. However, the court denied her request, ruling that she remained a public safety risk. Number 3. Sierra Halseth. In April 2021, 16-year-old Sierra Halseth and her 18-year-old boyfriend, Aaron Guerrero, conspired to murder Sierra's father, Daniel Halseth, in Las Vegas. The couple had been dating since June 2020, and their parents had forbidden the relationship after discovering the teens' plan to run away together. On April 9th, concerned family members contacted authorities after being unable to reach Daniel. Responding officers discovered Daniel's body in the garage. An autopsy revealed he had suffered over 70 wounds. Investigators found receipts for saws and gloves used in the crime and surveillance footage, showing the couple using Daniel's debit cards to make the payment. The couple fled Nevada in Daniel's car, heading toward Salt Lake City, Utah. They were apprehended days later after purchasing train tickets. On Sierra's phone, police discovered a video where they joked about the murder with no remorse. Sierra, being a minor, was ineligible for the death penalty. In October 2022, Sierra and Aaron were sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 22 years. Number 4. Sophia Koval. On May 23, 2024, in Lauderdale Lakes, Florida, 14-year-old Sophia Koval was at home with her 79-year-old grandmother while her father was visiting a friend. Upon returning, Sophia's father discovered his mother unresponsive on the floor, with bruises all over her body. Emergency responders transported her to the hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Sophia initially claimed self-defense, saying her grandmother scratched her, so she struck her with a belt multiple times. Further investigation revealed that Sophia also used her grandmother's walker to beat her. She reportedly told her father, "She was already dying. I helped her die." The medical examiner ruled Yevgenia's death a homicide. Sophia was charged as an adult with manslaughter and pleaded no contest. She was sentenced to Florida's maximum risk juvenile program for up to 3 years, followed by community supervision until age 21. After completing her sentence, Sophia, a Ukrainian citizen, is expected to be deported. If she violates her terms, she could face up to 15 years in adult prison. Number 5. Natasha Wallen Cornett. Natasha described herself as a Satan worshiper. On April 6, 1997, 18-year-old Natasha Cornett and her 5 teenage companions embarked on a journey from Pikeville, Kentucky, aiming to start a new life in New Orleans, fleeing their troubled pasts. During their trip, they stopped at a rest area in Greenville, Tennessee, where they encountered the Lillelid family. The Lillelids, devout Jehovah's Witnesses, engaged the group in conversation, sharing their faith. Seizing an opportunity to acquire a more reliable vehicle, the group decided to carjack the family's van. Violently, they forced the Lillelids into their own van and directed them to a secluded area. There, the family was lined up near a ditch. Then, 14-year-old Jason Bryant, who was the youngest in the group, shot the Lillelids. The husband, wife, and one of their children died instantly, while the last child survived, but was left permanently disabled. After the shootings, the teenagers abandoned their vehicle and fled in the Lillelids' van. 2 days later, they were apprehended. Facing charges of first-degree murder, all 6 individuals accepted plea deals to avoid potential death sentences. Natasha Cornett, despite not being the shooter, received 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Number 6. Tess Dam. In 2007, 15-year-old Tess Dam convinced her 17-year-old boyfriend, Brian Grove, to murder her mother, Linda Dam, in their Colorado home. Tess claimed her mother was abusive and neglected her. On the day of the incident, Tess and a friend, Jared Smith, waited outside in their getaway car. Grove entered the home and severely carried out the act on Linda, using a knife on her 18 times. After the incident, the group hid Linda's body in the trunk of her car and spent days attempting to dispose of it, including failed attempts to bury her at a cemetery. Police discovered the body during a welfare check. All 4 teenagers were arrested shortly thereafter. Tess pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 23 years, while Grove received 40 years. In 2020, Tess Dam was granted parole after serving just over 10 years of her sentence. She was released at age 28. Number 7. Scarlett Jenkinson. In February 2023, 15-year-old Scarlett Jenkinson and her friend, 15-year-old Eddie Ratcliffe, orchestrated the premeditated murder of 16-year-old Brianna Gay in Culcheth, Cheshire, England. Scarlett had previously been transferred to Birchwood Community High School, where she met Gay. She developed an obsession with Gay, expressing desires to kill her so she would always be with her. Both Scarlett and Ratcliffe harbored fascinations with violence. She consumed content about serial killers and accessed dark web videos, while Ratcliffe collected knives and had purchased the murder weapon during a trip to Bulgaria. On February 11, 2023, Jenkinson lured Gay to Culcheth Linear Park under false pretenses. There, Gay was ambushed and fatally stabbed over 28 times. The brutality of the attack and the young ages of those involved shocked the community. Both assailants were arrested the following day and charged with murder. In December 2023, they were convicted. Jenkinson received a life sentence with a minimum term of 22 years, and Ratcliffe received a minimum of 20 years. Number 8. Jordan Jobson. On August 2, 2007, in Wallsend, North Tyneside, 15-year-old Jordan Jobson, under the influence of drinks and substances, became involved in a street altercation. During this incident, 18-year-old Samantha Magin, a new mother who had given birth just 2 months prior, attempted to intervene to defuse the situation. Jobson, armed with a knife, attacked Samantha. Tragically, Samantha died of her injuries at the scene. Following the attack, Jobson was arrested and charged with murder. Despite her plea citing intoxication and lack of intent, the jury found her guilty of murder. Initially sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 15 years, her sentence was later reduced to 11 years upon appeal. After serving her sentence, Jobson was released on license in December 2020. However, within 6 months, she was recalled to prison for breaching her license conditions. As of May 2021, Jobson remained in custody, awaiting a parole board review to determine her suitability for re-release. Number 9. Charlie K. Ely. In April 2011, 18-year-old Charlie K. Ely became involved in the brutal murder of 15-year-old Seth Jackson in Summerfield, Florida. Ely lived alone and had allowed several individuals to stay at her home, including Michael Bargo Amber Wright, Kyle Hooper, and Justin Soto. A plan was devised to lure Seath to Ely's residence for them to carry out the act on him. Amber Wright, Soth's ex-girlfriend, contacted him under the pretense of rekindling their relationship. When Seath arrived at Ely's home, he was attacked by Bargo, Hooper, and Soto. They beat him, shot him multiple times. The group then sort of cremated the body. Ely was accused of providing the location for the murder and assisting in the plot. She claimed she participated under duress, stating she was threatened at gunpoint to comply, but was convicted and sentenced to life without parole. In 2020, her conviction was overturned due to ineffective counsel. She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, received a 10-year sentence, and was released. Since her release, she has kept a low profile. Number 10. Cassandra Bjorga. In April 2017, 17-year-old Cassandra Bjorga and her 19-year-old boyfriend, Johnny Ryder, murdered Cassandra's grandparents in their Lawrenceville, Georgia home. They planned the attack carefully, waiting for the lights to go out before entering. They beat the elderly couple with a baseball bat, then fatally used a knife on them. After the murders, they sealed the room with caulk to contain the smell and hosted parties while the bodies were still there. About a week later, police discovered the crime during a welfare check. Authorities tracked the couple to an apartment, and they were arrested. In February 2018, both pleaded guilty to murder and aggravated assault. They were sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms, with the possibility of parole after 60 years. Number 11. Frenecha Torres. In October 2018, 17-year-old Frenecha Torres, along with her accomplices, Khalil Miller and Nicholas Evans, orchestrated a robbery that led to the tragic death of 21-year-old William Tunches in Gwinnett County, Georgia. The group lured Tunches to a secluded area under the pretense of a transaction. Once there, they ambushed him, stealing his cell phone and cash. During the confrontation, Tunches was fatally shot. His body was later discovered by children walking along a trail, prompting a police investigation. Authorities swiftly identified Torres, Miller, and Evans as suspects. They were arrested and charged with felony murder, aggravated assault, and armed robbery. At her court appearance, Torres appeared stunned upon hearing the severity of the charges against her. The case drew significant media attention due to the ages of the perpetrators and the senseless nature of the crime. As of now, specific details regarding the trial outcomes and current sentences of Torres and her accomplices remain undisclosed. 18-year-old Princess Owusu Ansah. On February 2, 2023, 18-year-old Princess Owusu Ansah of Royston, Hertfordshire, entered the home of her former friend, also 18 years old, in East Dulwich, South London. The visit was not a friendly one. Owusu Ansah accused the victim of having an intimate affair with her boyfriend. Within minutes, the confrontation turned violent, leading to a disturbing attack that was live-streamed on Snapchat. Owusu Ansah had previously been friends with the victim, and the two shared a personal history. However, tensions escalated following rumors of an alleged romantic involvement between the victim and Owusu Ansah's boyfriend. That day, Owusu Ansah let herself into her former friend's home. The victim, unaware of what was about to happen, found herself ambushed in her own bedroom. The attack began when Owusu Ansah went live on Snapchat and started filming on her phone. She started punching the victim, who scrambled to protect herself by hiding under a duvet in the corner of the room. During the ordeal, Owusu Ansah shouted that to the victim to say sorry and apologize for trying to have an affair with her man, while still recording the victim's injuries. She then boiled a kettle of water, walked back to the bedroom, and brutally poured the liquid over the girl's body as she screamed in pain. The violence did not stop there. Owusu Ansah picked up a knife and started using it on the victim's leg while continuing to record the attack. After a while, she struck the blade against the wall and yelled at the lady, telling her not to piss her off and shining the knife on her face. As the victim pleaded for her life, Owusu Ansah grinned at the camera and continued the assault. Along with the physical violence, Owusu Ansah deliberately smashed sentimental items in the room, including a photograph of the victim's deceased mother. The assault only ended when the victim managed to escape the house and run into the street to seek help. A member of the public who saw the video circulating on Snapchat contacted the police. Officers responded quickly, and the victim was taken to King's College Hospital in South London. Her injuries, though serious, were assessed as non-life-threatening and not life-changing. Owusu Ansah was arrested shortly after and charged with grievous bodily harm with intent and criminal damage. She pleaded guilty at Croydon Magistrates Court on March 6, 2023. During the court proceedings at Inner London Crown Court, the victim submitted a statement describing the lasting impact of the attack on her life. During the sentencing, Owusu Ansah did not visibly react. She did not make a public statement during the court proceedings, nor did she address the victim in court. However, in a post-sentencing interview conducted by probation staff, she stated that she acted out of betrayal and emotional distress, citing feelings of humiliation and anger. She did not express direct remorse for her actions at the time of sentencing, though she acknowledged that recording and sharing the incident was wrong in hindsight. On May 9, 2023, Princess Owusu Ansah was sentenced to 3 years in a Young Offenders Institute for grievous bodily harm with intent and criminal damage. As of March 2025, she has served approximately 2 years in custody. She was 18 years old at the time of the crime and will be 21 by the time of her release, assuming full sentence completion. 16-year-old Jelena Jane Bedrijo Almario. In May 2016, 16-year-old Jelena Jane Bedrijo Almario of Hanford, California, was arrested for orchestrating a human trafficking operation involving minors. Almario's activities went on for several weeks and involved recruiting 4 girls between the ages of 14 and 15. She connected with these individuals through friends, acquaintances, and social media platforms. Once contact was established, Almario would post their photographs on various websites to solicit clients to send them to in order to make money off them. After the client makes their choice, she will then transport the girls to motels along Highway 99 in Tulare County, where they met with clients. The popular name for the business she was running was pimping. The victims would often leave home for weekends or a few nights to participate in these activities without informing any of their loved ones or relatives. The operation came to the attention of law enforcement when the mother of one victim received threatening messages from Almario while searching for her daughter. This prompted an investigation by Hanford police, leading to Almario's arrest. Detective Richard of the Hanford Police Department identified Almario as the primary suspect in the case. He noted that individuals like Almario often exploit vulnerable youths by initially presenting themselves as friends before manipulating them into exploitative situations. Almario faced charges in Kings County Superior Court, including trafficking of a minor, sending threatening communications to a family member of one of the victims, and making terrorist threats. Despite being a juvenile at the time, she was tried as an adult due to the severity of the offenses. On July 3, 2017, 2 days after her 18th birthday, she was sentenced to 13 years in state prison. After the sentencing, she was transferred to the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, California. As of May 2025, she has served approximately 8 years of her 13-year sentence. Given her age at the time of sentencing, she is currently 25 years old, and she is expected to be released at the age of 31. Thank you guys for watching. Which of these wicked female teenagers deserves to spend their lives in jail? Comment below.